Imagine you have a PhD in finance and $1 million brain, but your neighbor, who still struggles to program his microwave, just retired 5 years early. It is infuriating, right? You are doing the math, tracking the macro trends, and analyzing the Fed rate while he is just buying basic index funds and going for a walk. There is a specific, almost painful reason why your high IQ is actually your biggest liability when it comes to building wealth. Most people think making money is a game of chess, where the smartest person with the most moves wins. But the reality is that money is a game of tag. And the more you think about the physics of running, the faster you get caught. Think about the last time you tried to make a big financial decision. If you are a hard thinker, you probably opened 12 tabs. You looked at historical data from the 1920s. You weighed the pros and cons of 3 different platforms. By the time you were ready to click buy, the opportunity had changed, or worse, you were so mentally exhausted that you did nothing at all. This is the intellectual's trap. We have been conditioned since grade school to believe that more effort equals more reward. If a math problem is hard, you work harder. But money does not care how hard you think. In fact, money often rewards the person who thinks the least, provided they are thinking about the right things. Let's look at 2 people. We will call the first one Arthur. Arthur is brilliant. He understands the nuances of the tax code and follows the 24-hour news cycle like his life depends on it. He is constantly looking for the edge, the hedge, and the hidden gem. Then there is Ben. Ben thinks about money for roughly 10 minutes a month. He has a simple rule: then less than he makes, and put the rest in a boring box that grows. 10 years later, Ben is a multimillionaire. And Arthur is still explaining why the market is irrational. The problem is that Arthur is trying to outsmart a system that is built on human psychology, not logic. When you think too hard, you start seeing patterns that do not exist. You start trying to predict the unpredictable. The simple thinker has a massive advantage because they have a high tolerance for boredom. Hard thinkers hate being bored. They want to optimize. They want to tweak the dials, but wealth is not built in the tweaking. It is built in the waiting. When you overanalyze, you create friction. Every time you rethink your strategy, you risk making a move based on fear or ego rather than the plan. Simple thinkers do not have enough moving parts in their strategy to break them. They do not get paralyzed by the what-ifs because they only care about the what-is. The most dangerous thing a smart person can do is believe that a complex problem requires a complex solution. If your car engine dies, that is a complex problem with a complex solution. If you want to be rich in 20 years, that is a simple problem that requires a very simple, very boring solution. But smart people feel like they are cheating if it is too easy. They feel like they are not using their potential if they are just doing what everyone else does. So they go looking for the complicated path, the one with the high barriers to entry, because they believe their intelligence is the key that unlocks it. In reality, they are just building a maze for themselves. Think about the way we talk about the economy. Hard thinkers love using words like quantitative easing or inverted yield curves. It makes them feel in control, but knowing those words does not put a single dollar in your bank account. The simple thinker looks at the world and says, people still need to eat. People still need houses, and technology is probably going to keep moving forward. That is it. That is the whole thesis. It sounds primitive, almost stupid, but it is infinitely more effective than a 50-page report on market volatility. Because when the market eventually drops, the simple thinker says, well, things are on sale. The hard thinker says, wait, is this the beginning of a structural shift in the global debt cycle? And then they freeze. That freeze is where the real damage happens. While the genius is busy calculating the velocity of the crash, the simple thinker is just sticking to the script. They aren't paralyzed by the sheer weight of their own knowledge. You see, being smart makes you great at justifying your mistakes. If a simple thinker loses money, they admit they were wrong. If a hard thinker loses money, they come up with a brilliant, complex theory as to why the world is wrong, and they are still right. That ego is an expensive luxury you cannot afford. Think about the sheer mental bandwidth you spend every day worrying about the perfect entry point or the correct asset allocation. That is energy you aren't using to actually increase your income or enjoy your life. The simple thinker has outsourced their financial brain to a few basic rules, which frees up their mind to focus on what actually matters. They aren't checking their portfolio at 3 a.m. because their strategy doesn't require them to be a hero. They've accepted that they can't control the wind, so they just focus on the sails. But there is a darker side to this. Hard thinkers often fall for the sophistication trap. This is where you think that because something is exclusive or hard to understand, it must be better. This is how hedge funds that underperform the market stay in business. They sell complexity to people who think they are too smart for a basic index fund. They make you feel like part of an elite club, while the person with the simple dumb strategy is actually the one laughing all the way to the bank. You are paying a premium for a puzzle that doesn't even have a prize at the end. The reality is that the financial world is designed to make you think it's complicated. If it were simple, thousands of people would be out of a job. They need you to be a hard thinker. They need you to feel like you need a guide through the woods. But the secret that the simple thinkers know is that there are no woods. There is just a straight path that most people are too distracted to stay on. When you stop trying to solve the market like it's a riddle, you start winning. You start realizing that the person who does the least usually ends up with the most. Wait until you see how this plays out in the long run. The simple thinker isn't just winning because they are lucky. They are winning because they have eliminated the one thing that ruins most fortunes: human intervention. Every time you think hard about your money, you are giving yourself an opportunity to mess it up. You are inviting your emotions to wear a suit and pretend to be logic. The simple thinker has no such illusions. They know they are their own worst enemy. So they build a system that doesn't require them to be present. Think about the overhead of being a genius. You have to stay updated. You have to read the reports. And you have to be ready to pivot at a moment's notice. It is exhausting. But the simple thinker, their overhead is zero. They have a strategy that works while they sleep, while they vacation, and while they ignore the news entirely. They have decoupled their time and their intelligence from their wealth. While the hard thinker is working for their money by constantly analyzing it, the simple thinker's money is working for them without asking for a single opinion. The most painful part is realizing that your intelligence is actually being used against you. Marketing teams at big banks know exactly how to trigger a smart person. They use charts, jargon, and complex projections because they know you can't resist a good intellectual challenge. They bait you into the active game because that is where they make their fees. The simple thinker doesn't even look at the bait. They are too busy doing something stupid, like buying the same thing every month regardless of what the headlines say. It's almost embarrassing how well it works. If you want to break out of the hard thinker's trap, you have to give yourself permission to be boring. You have to accept that your brain is a tool for many things, but predicting the future of a global economy isn't one of them. The moment you stop trying to be the smartest person in the room is the moment your net worth starts to breathe. You don't need a higher IQ. You need a simpler plan and the discipline to leave it alone. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't filled with more information, it is filled with less action.